The new board for this Blackstar arrived, and a quick visual confirmation indicates that everything's much the same, and I'll be transferring things over and making sure there are no jumpers for 120 versus 240 volt use. Now, this thing was just wrapped in bubble wrap and did not have an actual box. And as you can tell, the pots took a pretty good bending. So I will be going through here in a minute and making sure that all these connections are still good on the pots where they got a bend. And I'll triple check all the factory joints before I put this back in there. It's wave soldered. Initial look seems okay, but I just want to make sure. It's never a good sign when these pots get all bent. And see if I can show this. They weren't installed completely level, so I may go through there and remove some of that factory solder and redo a few of them a little bit better. Just a lot of stress on these little bits of fiberglass in the boards on the pots that hold the legs. Fingers crossed that it works just fine. But first I've got to disconnect all these wires, then pull the tubes, then pull all the knobs and stuff on the front panel. So, and I will use this video as necessary to tell me where the wires go on the new board. All right, it's time to remove all these screws. I'll deal with the front panel stuff in a little bit. But each one of these screws has got a lot of what maybe red Loctite on them. So let's see if a little bit of elbow grease does the trick, whether I need to use a solvent. I'm starting them all by hand to make sure that I don't need to use any solvent, or I want to strip them. For instance, this one here, it's got a lot of that red stuff in the threads. And if I try to force that, the screw may strip. Let's see if that was enough. All right, I think that's all of them loosened, so I can go back with a power tool in a minute. Let me get the stuff off the front panel first. All right, none of these are set screw, so let's see if these are 10 or 11s. They're 11s. Not that they're that tight to begin with. Probably all could be done with my fingers. Yep. All right, old board out. I transfer these fuses to the new board and take a look at those pots on the new board like I mentioned. But first, I'm going to take all these screws with that red coating on them, which is fine to apply for one application, but not great to remove and then retighten. And I'm going to give them all an acetone bath while I have some lunch and try to get all that material off there. So we will revisit this in a moment. the new board's in place, and I'm not going to show every little aspect of reassembling it because a big chunk of that is just the same stuff that you saw in the disassembly backwards. But I'm going to do a few things that they did not do. For instance, actually tighten all the nuts on the front panel. They were all finger tight. I want to get them as tight as these alpha pot bushings will allow. If you do it too much, they'll strip. But after a while, you get a sense for how much. I'll do the others off camera. The other thing I need to do is transfer these old buttons to the new board. They should just pull off the old ones. They do. They've got a little square in there. I'll line the square up. That doesn't feel quite right. Let's see. I would expect that to go in more. I guess it doesn't, though. Going by the dirt line on the old ones, it just doesn't go in that far. So. Rubbing on the top. That was sticking a little bit. Now they don't want to come off. Great. I think I know what the problem is, if I can get it to come off again. Let's see if I can pull this without hurting the plastic. No, can't get a grip on it. Maybe if I force the board down there a little bit in these areas and then tighten, because there are no screws holding the board in place along the front edge, just the nuts. Yeah, that's what I need to do. See, boys and girls, we learned something today. That one's off. Now that one's off, and that one's happy, so. Gotta find the happy medium, where this one will switch, and the others will switch. I think I know what's going on here. This one's happy, this one's happy. This one's stuck a little bit. I don't think it's a very good design when the things don't want to switch because of the layout of things in relation to the front panel. Just saying, with the resources I had 15 years ago designing pedals, I was able to make my push buttons line up on my PCBs with the holes in my enclosures. You think a company with the sales of Blackstar would have this a little more precise, so you didn't have to just kind of nudge on the board until the stars aligned. But regardless of all that, the stars are now aligned, so I will tighten up the rest of these nuts. Isn't this exciting? The board's back in and it's secured and the pots are on. But before I go to putting the fuses in and then setting the bias and all that fun stuff, I want to talk about this red paint that they used. I have no idea what the hell that stuff was, but alcohol didn't dissolve it. Naphtha didn't dissolve it. Acetone didn't dissolve it. Putting it in my ultrasonic cleaner didn't do much. I mean, I got a lot of it off, but there's still residue of it on there. And whatever that stuff was, when it reacted with the solvents that I used, it's got like a corrosion on the metal itself. So whatever the hell paint they're using, they need to switch to something else. Now I have all these screws very tight, and I don't think it's going to go anywhere. But just to try to make sure that everything stays where it ought, I'm going to give it a dab of a proper adhesive, and it's even a pretty one. I'm just going to give each one a little bit of red nail polish. In the future, if that needs to come up, any of these, just a little bit of acetone on a Q-tip will make it all go away. But until then, it will give each one of these screws a good bit of resistance to vibration. If you're wondering, I'm using Sally Henson Color Therapy, and it's called Haute Springs for the sophisticated daring amplifier. As you can tell, it doesn't take a lot. All I'm trying to do is make these screws not want to vibrate easily, but at the same time, they are removable. And if this had been used from the beginning, none of these would be corroded. And after cleaning in acetone or whatever I used, they would all be nice and shiny. So it's time to put tubes in this amp and rebias it. Oh, that's right, duh. Sorry, the tone stack only operates on the dirty channel. Sorry, I don't play these very often. I was just making sure all the pots work quietly. All right, well, I'm calling this a success. I'm gonna let this run for about 3 hours tomorrow, give it a high volume playing test and let everything get hot to make sure that nothing goes wrong with the new board out of the box. But I think the owner's gonna be very happy.